In the 17th century, Europe was immersed in a sea of conflicts, and England was no exception. Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher, lived through this tumultuous period, marked by the English Civil War, which divided the nation and challenged the very foundations of morality, authority, and social order. Amidst this chaos, Hobbes formulated an idea that would become central to his most famous work, Leviathan, 1651. In his words, "Man is a wolf to man." This phrase resonates as a harsh critique of human nature and the fragility of human relationships when they lack structure and centralized power. For Hobbes, without a superior authority to govern people's lives, relationships would devolve into a constant struggle for survival. He described this state as a war of all against all. In this environment, life, according to Hobbes, would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, in short. The philosopher believed that without central power, individuals would be driven by their most primal instincts, the desire for self-preservation and the relentless pursuit of power. The phrase "man is a wolf to man" is not just a metaphor, but a blunt description of human nature. In a state without rules, people would become so egocentric and competitive that they would prioritize their own survival above all else, even at the expense of others. This perspective is sobering when we reflect on modern society, where, even though we live in structured systems governed by laws and regulations, glimpses of Hobbes' state of nature still appear. This can be seen in situations of social collapse, such as civil wars, natural disasters, or economic crises, where the absence of order reveals a more primal side of human nature. Hobbes' view is mirrored in fictional works as well, like William Golding's Lord of the Flies, in which a group of children stranded on a deserted island quickly loses their morality and forms a society based on fear and violence. Hobbes' concept also extends beyond apocalyptic scenarios and is evident in competitive environments, such as the corporate and political worlds, where the relentless drive for success often places ethics in the background. Here, Hobbes' idea of man being a wolf to man becomes an eerily accurate description of the cutthroat ambition and lack of empathy that can characterize such spaces. The question becomes, if humans are, indeed, wolves to each other, how can we live together peacefully in society? This is the question Hobbes attempts to answer with the creation of the Leviathan, a central power capable of controlling mankind's destructive impulses and ensuring peace. With his grim view of human nature, Hobbes argued that the only way to escape the chaos of the state of nature was through a social contract. This contract would establish a centralized and absolute power, the Leviathan. For Hobbes, the Leviathan would be the only solution to tame the savage within us, ensuring order and security. In this contract, individuals would give up certain freedoms in exchange for protection. Hobbes believed that, recognizing the dangers of the state of nature, people would willingly submit to a higher authority. This ruler, or Leviathan, would have absolute power to impose laws and punish those who threatened the peace. It is important to note that, for Hobbes, the Leviathan was not just a political figure. It was an entity that transcended individuality. It would need to be powerful enough to suppress the selfish desires of individuals and maintain peace. However, Hobbes' proposal raised debates about freedom and authoritarianism that still persist today. The idea of relinquishing liberty in exchange for order remains relevant in the modern world. For example, after events like 9/11, many countries implemented laws that restricted privacy in the name of security. Hobbes would likely have supported such measures, arguing that collective security justifies sacrificing certain individual freedoms. However, philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau challenged this view, arguing that the social contract should preserve not only security, but also freedom and equality. While Hobbes saw the Leviathan as a necessary force to control chaos, Rousseau believed that humans could govern themselves justly and cooperatively. This tension between freedom and order continues to be explored in literary works as well. A notable example is George Orwell's Star 1984, which depicts a totalitarian state where the government controls every aspect of life. While Hobbes viewed the Leviathan as a protector, Orwell shows what can happen when absolute power becomes oppressive, stripping away human dignity. Modern research also sheds light on human behavior in authoritarian regimes. Neuroscience studies reveal that power can alter brain chemistry, boosting self-confidence while diminishing empathy. This supports Hobbes' view that, without control, humans tend toward domination and selfishness. The Leviathan, in Hobbes' eyes, offers a pragmatic solution to the human dilemma: sacrifice freedom to ensure peace. But this idea raises fundamental questions about the balance between security and liberty. Is a Leviathan always necessary, or can humanity transcend its competitive nature without resorting to authoritarianism? Hobbes may have written about the state of nature as a theoretical condition, but his description of humans as wolves to one another resonates deeply in the everyday dynamics of modern life. Even though we live in societies structured by laws and norms, the traces of the state of nature still appear in our social interactions, in the competition for resources and the relentless pursuit of status. Thomas Hobbes' view on human nature doesn't just end with his metaphor of the wolf. It also extends to the structure of society itself and how humans can coexist peacefully. The solution Hobbes offers in Leviathan is a central, absolute authority that can regulate human behavior and create order out of chaos. But the question arises, is such an authority always necessary, or can humans find ways to coexist without the need for a powerful sovereign? To answer this, Hobbes introduces the idea of a social contract, a mutual agreement between individuals to surrender some of their freedoms in exchange for security and order. According to Hobbes, the state of nature is so brutal and chaotic that humans, upon realizing the dangers of anarchy, would willingly submit to the authority of a sovereign, who he calls a Leviathan, in order to ensure peace and stability. This sovereign would have absolute power to make laws and enforce them, even to the point of punishing those who would disrupt the social order. For Hobbes, the Leviathan isn't just a political institution. It is a fundamental necessity for survival. Without it, human society would devolve into constant conflict and suffering. This is why Hobbes advocates for the absolute authority of a ruler. Only a power strong enough to quash the instincts of selfishness and aggression could ensure the well-being of society as a whole. However, this idea isn't without controversy. Critics, especially those from more libertarian or democratic traditions, argue that Hobbes' solution opens the door to tyranny. If one individual or group has absolute power, there is a risk of that power becoming corrupt and oppressive. This issue is exemplified in dystopian works like George Orwell's 1984, where totalitarian regimes exercise unchecked power, manipulating truth and controlling every aspect of people's lives. In such a system, the state not only guarantees security, but also stifles freedom and individuality. The tension between security and freedom continues to be relevant in today's world. In the wake of events like the 9/11 attacks, many governments implemented invasive surveillance measures in the name of national security. These actions, which restrict certain freedoms, echo Hobbes' argument that security can justify the surrender of individual liberties. But as we've seen in history, when power is concentrated in the hands of a few, it often leads to the abuse of power and the erosion of personal rights. This debate between the need for security and the preservation of freedom remains a central issue in modern political discourse. The idea of a powerful sovereign also raises questions about the nature of human cooperation. While Hobbes believed that humans were inherently selfish and would only act in their own interest, others, such as Rousseau, argued that humans are capable of genuine cooperation and altruism. Rousseau believed that the natural state of humanity was not one of conflict, but of harmony, one where people lived according to their instincts and worked together for mutual benefit. He contended that society and its institutions were the true sources of corruption, turning humans into self-interested beings. Rousseau's vision stands in stark contrast to Hobbes' view of human nature. While Hobbes' idea of the Leviathan assumes that humans are inherently flawed and must be controlled through external authority, Rousseau believes that humans have the potential for goodness and moral development. Rousseau's concept of the general will is rooted in the idea that, through cooperation and mutual respect, individuals can form a just society without needing an all-powerful ruler to impose order. In literature and political theory, the tension between Hobbes and Rousseau's ideas continues to play out. Hobbes' view of human nature as violent and competitive can be seen in real-world examples of political corruption, war, and inequality, where leaders abuse their power and the masses are subjected to oppression. On the other hand, Rousseau's ideal of a just society built on cooperation and equality has inspired movements for democracy and human rights, calling for governments that serve the needs of the people rather than the interests of the few. Today, as we navigate a complex world filled with global conflicts, economic inequalities, and political polarization, Hobbes' insights into human nature remain compelling. His notion that humans are driven by self-interest and fear of anarchy still resonates in the way people respond to crises. The tendency to protect one's own survival, even at the expense of others, is a primal instinct that continues to shape how we act in the world, whether it's in international relations, corporate competition, or social dynamics. At the same time, Hobbes' idea of the Leviathan raises important questions about the balance between freedom and control. In the modern world, we see governments and institutions that attempt to regulate behavior and maintain order, but we also see the consequences of unchecked power, as seen in authoritarian regimes. The challenge, as Hobbes would argue, is to find a system that maintains order without descending into tyranny. Hobbes' bleak view of human nature, though pessimistic, offers valuable insights into the human condition. His belief that we are driven by self-preservation and ambition helps us understand many of the tensions in contemporary society. Yet, his call for absolute authority reminds us of the dangers of too much control and the need to ensure that power remains accountable and just. As we reflect on Hobbes' theories today, we are left with crucial questions about the nature of human behavior and the best way to organize society. Can we overcome our competitive instincts and live in a truly cooperative society? Or will the wolf of human nature always be lurking, demanding a powerful Leviathan to keep us in check? Ultimately, Hobbes' legacy offers us an opportunity to critically examine our own political systems, our social contracts, and the balance between freedom and security. His ideas, though centuries old, remain relevant as we continue to navigate the complexities of human nature and the challenges of building a just and peaceful world. The third and final part of Hobbes' philosophy extends his exploration of human nature and the role of authority into modern social and political environments. While the concepts of self-interest, power, and authority he explored centuries ago still resonate today, we must also recognize how these ideas manifest in contemporary society. Hobbes' notion of humans as wolves to one another can be found in the behavior and structures of modern-day politics, economics, and even social dynamics. His vision of the Leviathan, a centralized, authoritative power, continues to influence how governments and institutions maintain order and control. In the modern world, Hobbes' perspective on human nature is especially relevant in times of crisis, such as natural disasters, economic collapses, or political instability. These situations often bring out the more primal instincts in people, revealing the wolf within. When security is threatened, people often act out of fear and self-preservation, even at the expense of others. This can lead to hoarding, violence, and chaos, as seen in historical events like the outbreak of war or the economic crises that cause widespread instability. Hobbes' war of all against all can be observed in these moments, where lawlessness prevails and society's fragile structures break down. For instance, in the aftermath of natural disasters like hurricanes or earthquakes, the lack of order can lead to looting and other behaviors that might seem extreme in normal circumstances. Similarly, in the world of finance and business, the intense competition for limited resources can lead to corruption, unethical practices, and the prioritization of individual gain over the common good. Hobbes' theory aligns with the cutthroat nature of these environments, where people are willing to sacrifice ethical considerations to secure their survival or success. One of the most pertinent examples of Hobbes' theory in action today is the world of politics. In a globalized world, where power struggles are constantly at play, Hobbes' ideas on the necessity of a powerful central authority remain highly relevant. Modern political systems often feature a delicate balance between central authority and individual freedoms. On one hand, governments must ensure order, security, and the protection of citizens' rights. On the other hand, the concentration of power can lead to authoritarian regimes where leaders abuse their power for personal or political gain. In the past century, we've seen numerous examples of leaders using their power to control populations in the name of national security or the common good. Totalitarian regimes such as those led by Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin offer stark examples of Hobbes' idea gone to extremes. These dictatorships demonstrate how unchecked power can quickly devolve into oppression, where the Leviathan becomes a force for harm rather than protection. These regimes show the dark side of Hobbes' theory, where the concentration of power meant to ensure peace instead becomes the means by which the government abuses and exploits its citizens. Yet, Hobbes' argument for a central authority that enforces law and order has also found support in the context of maintaining peace and security in democratic societies. Governments in democratic countries may not possess the totalitarian power Hobbes envisioned, but the idea of maintaining order through a strong state is still influential. For example, after September 11th, many countries implemented sweeping measures to monitor and control their citizens in the name of national security. These measures, which often include surveillance and restrictions on privacy, echo Hobbes' argument that to prevent chaos, individuals must sometimes sacrifice personal freedoms. This brings us to a crucial debate. How far should a society go in surrendering its individual freedoms for the sake of security? Hobbes would argue that the benefits of security and peace outweigh the loss of personal liberty. However, critics of this approach argue that it leads to authoritarianism, where governments gain too much control, threatening democracy itself. In today's world, we see this tension play out in the ongoing debates over privacy, surveillance, and civil liberties. How much should governments be allowed to restrict personal freedoms in order to protect citizens? The post-9/11 world has sparked significant discussion about this very issue, and it's clear that Hobbes' arguments remain a central part of this ongoing conversation. But it's not just in politics and global crises where Hobbes' ideas come into play. On a more personal level, his thoughts on human nature also resonate in the dynamics of modern society, particularly in social media, where competition for attention and status can drive behavior. The like economy, where individuals compete for followers, shares, and likes, mirrors Hobbes' theory of the human struggle for status and power. People often manipulate their image, engage in self-promotion, and even adopt extreme positions or performative behavior to gain social approval. In this sense, the social media world is a modern-day version of Hobbes' state of nature, where the competition for limited resources, such as attention and social capital, drives much of human activity. Moreover, the rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation in today's digital age underscores Hobbes' notion that without a central authority to control and regulate behavior, society can descend into chaos. False information, manipulation, and the erosion of trust in institutions are all signs that the fabric of social cohesion can be fragile, and Hobbes' fear of a war of all against all seems to become more and more apparent in our current media landscape. Despite these challenges, Hobbes' pessimistic view of human nature doesn't mean that humanity is doomed to perpetual conflict. In fact, Hobbes himself believed that the establishment of a Leviathan, a centralized authority, could effectively prevent the destructive consequences of human self-interest. In modern times, we see this idea reflected in the role of institutions, be it governments, legal systems, or social organizations that provide structure and enforce rules. These systems help regulate human behavior, ensuring that society functions smoothly despite the natural inclination toward competition and self-preservation. At the same time, though, Hobbes' theory reminds us of the need for vigilance. No system of governance is perfect, and the potential for corruption and abuse of power is always present. This is why Hobbes' work remains so relevant today. His warning about the fragility of social order and the dangers of unchecked human instinct serves as a cautionary tale. We must remain mindful of the balance between freedom and authority, between self-interest and collective well-being. In the end, Hobbes' vision of the wolf within all of us challenges us to confront the darker aspects of human nature. But it also offers us a path forward, a way to understand the complexities of human behavior and how we can create systems of governance that preserve order, promote cooperation, and protect individual freedoms. While the metaphor of the wolf may never fully disappear, it is through self-awareness, reflection, and the creation of fair and just systems that we can hope to tame the wolf within and build a more harmonious society. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's chat. Thanks for watching.